Have you ever been lost in a video game? I know I have. To be honest, I'm pretty sure I'm lost right now. But that's okay. Sometimes being lost can be frustrating, but other times it's kinda fun. Why is that? What even is being lost? You could say that it's to not know where you are, struggling to find out where to go. To me, that struggle can be kind of fun, but it can also easily turn into an unfun annoyance. As a game designer, I think a lot about this delicate balance. I want players to feel the excitement that is the unknown, but I don't want it to feel so fast that it invokes apathy. Let's talk a bit about what goes into designing levels for exploration. Hi, I'm Stijn, project lead at Frog Vibes, currently working on 5 Bucks for the Bus, an open world RPG about life in our modern society. Thanks for tuning in, this is Stijn at Work. There are a few things I'd like to share my thoughts on. I want to talk about how a literal path can aid exploration, with a little detour to talk about the nature of choice, downsides to implying a correct route, the challenge in excluding paths completely, and finally what it's like as a game designer to design an area with exploration in mind. A literal path seems like it would go against the core principle of an exploration game. Aren't players supposed to be completely free? They should choose where to go themselves, right? Well, that touches on the subject of choice. There's a lot to say about choice, that is, if we want to get philosophical. For now, what is most important is to think of choices as a spectrum. On the one end, we have an uninformed choice, on the other, an obvious choice. An uninformed choice is essentially a gamble. You could say that it's not a choice at all. Imagine you're exploring a cave. You can choose to either go left or right. That's all the information you're given. Is this really a choice? An obvious choice is so informed that you can't help but do what's intended. The alternative would be self-sabotage. An example would be that same cave. Now, one way clearly leads to gold, while the other leads to a spike trap. The correct route is so obvious that it's devoid of choice. Anyway, what's in the middle? Somewhere in the middle there are what I like to call interesting choices. These are choices where the player has to consider the information they have. They combine it to assess the situation and then come to a conclusion that fits their strategic approach. So what does that have to do with a literal path? First off, we shouldn't see a literal path as something that needs to be followed, rather as something that informs the player. Similar to a landmark, looking at the path can help remind you of where you are. You will know whether you are on a path or not. This might not sound like a lot, but it sure makes a difference. Though unlike a landmark, paths tend to lead to places too. And remember that knowing where you are is a type of information. It can be a thread that keeps the orientation of the player together. Furthermore, a player can decide to follow the path or choose to stray from it. So it's something that informs the player, thereby allowing their choices to become more interesting. I wonder if one can truly wander without having something to wander off from. Can you explore when you have no idea where you are or where anything is? Let's go somewhere. Some of you might recognize this place. It's Salmon Creek Forest from Here Comes Niko. Here Comes Niko was her debut title. If you haven't heard of it before, that's fine too. I'll make sure to include a link to the Steam page in the description. I brought you here because while designing this level, I came to realize the benefits of including a path. You see, the first time I made this level, it turned out incredibly confusing. It was easy to get disoriented. I ended up deleting most of it and starting from scratch. So what did I do differently the second time around? For one, I tried to avoid bottlenecks. I didn't want there to be places you could only reach through one specific route. I also included a lot more empty space. This is very important for the pacing of a level. Empty spaces serve as a palate cleanser. When you pass through them, you have a moment to process everything else. I mean, just look at this place. Doesn't it make you want to relax? The final thing I changed was the addition of this path. It leads all the way around the island. While it touches on a few interesting destinations, it doesn't lead to every single one. And it always leads back to the beginning. I honestly wasn't expecting the impact this would have on the experience. This taught me a lot about how players experience a game world. In the end, this experience is what we, as game designers, are trying to design. So, paths are good, right? Well, that depends. I have a small gripe with implied paths. Let's say we're exploring a dungeon. The layout is pretty clear. I can see that the designer wants me to take this path. But knowing that the designer wouldn't just include dead ends, I know that there are going to be extra treasures when I go this way. Whether I want a treasure or not, it does feel like I'd intentionally be skipping something by taking the correct route. So I inevitably take every detour. This creates a new inevitable route, turning what looks like an explorable space into a linear trial. Some of my favorite games are the original Dragon Quest titles. You know these funky little NES games? One reason I like them is that they are designed with dead ends in mind. The designers know very well that if there's something in every corner, the player will want to go systematically to every corner. So they include dead ends to keep them on their toes. My favorite ones are the dead ends at the end of a really long trial. You think to yourself, I've come all this way, there must be at least some reward. And then there just isn't. It lends an amount of realism to the world, almost as if it wasn't brought into existence only to keep me entertained. A complete lack of any paths or routes can also be a bit tricky. Imagine a forest with equally spaced trees and props. The moment you turn around, you won't know where you came from. Because there's no direction in the level design, it becomes very disorienting. Which in many cases isn't great, but for something like a horror game, it might be perfect. If you want to pester your players even more, move around some props everywhere they're not looking. It's a reasonably simple trick to pull off, but it creates quite an interesting experience. There's one more quirk that makes designing levels for exploration a challenge. You see, once I've built a level, I'll know where everything is. I'm the designer. I can never truly experience what it will be like to explore it. There are some exceptions, but there will still be a separation between designer and player. That's why playtesting is essential, as it is with most things in game development. Hey, so we make games. I've already shown you a bit of Here Comes Niko, the 3D platformer for tired people. It's available now. Currently we're working on $5 for the Bus, an RPG about life in our modern society. We also run a Discord where you can chat with us or take part in Game Club. Game Club is like a book club for games. We pick and discuss a new game every month. It's all very low pressure, so jump in whenever you feel like. Anyhow, let's move on. So how do you design a level for exploration? Well, you want to keep in mind what information you're creating for the player to base their choices on. More useful information creates a deeper experience with more meaningful choices. Paths are, among other tools, a great way to create this information. But a designer should also remember that a path can lead to an inevitable route, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it can be, especially when the player is aware of it. A complete lack of any paths or routes can be a bit uncomfortable, so that's something to be aware of. Finally, a game designer should know that they are looking at everything through a tainted window. They will likely never be able to experience their game like the player will. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.